My father's from Peru and my mother's from Puerto Rico. They are converts to the church, and I recently came out to them about 2 weeks ago. My mother was visiting me here in Utah, and she finally asked me, like, why haven't you gotten married yet, and why have you stopped going to church? And I'm a terrible liar, so I just kind of ran it down from, I think, after graduating from high school up to now, and I just told her that I was gay. And immediately she held my hand, and she told me that she loved me, and she told me that I was her son, and that she supported me, and that she was proud of me. And I think it was one of the more intimate moments I've ever shared with my mother, because we talked about it for about 2 hours, and we kind of went back and forth just crying and crying. And all these lights started going off in her head, saying, like, oh my gosh, I get it. I get why you kind of distanced yourself. I get why you didn't want to come back to Florida. I get it now. Like, and it was really heartbreaking for both of us, because I kind of tried to slowly separate myself from my family just out of fear of rejection. And I kind of figured, if I separate myself enough, I would, it would be less heartbreaking, if they did reject me. So I was very surprised with her reaction and her response and how accepting she was of me. When she went back to Florida, my dad, I guess, had sent her on an errand that she didn't know she was on. And so he asked her how I was doing, why I wasn't going to church, kind of like grilling her. And I guess she's kind of like me and not a very good liar. So she actually told him that I was taking anti-anxiety meds. And he was like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Why is he doing that? And so she said, well, he's questioning his sexuality. So I think she was kind of like lightly trying to like bring it up. So apparently he went into his room for about 2 days and didn't come out. My mom's not even sure if he was eating or anything. He was just broken. And so when he finally came out, he told her that he wanted me to call him and talk. And so I did. And when I called, he said, David, you're my son, and before we start this, I want you to know that I love you, but I want you to be completely honest with me and tell me everything. So I did, and of course, it was like the conversation I had been dreading my entire life, and mainly because of where my parents come from, and also they're converts, and they're very devout Mormons, and especially my dad. Like, he'll bear his testimony to you upon first meeting. Like, he is very, very much a convert. And so I told him, and then immediately he said to me that my first mistake was that I didn't tell them about it earlier in my life. My second mistake is I didn't seek professional help to rid myself of this disease. My third mistake was that I didn't pray enough to rid myself of this temptation, so-called temptation. And then he just began to say like the most terrible things about gay people, and saying really horrible things. I mean, we talked for about an hour and a half about it, and it was mainly him just kind of being disapproving and telling me how terrible it was what I was doing, and that and I think no matter what I said, I guess he was so convinced that he was right, and he repeatedly said that as the patriarch of the family, he had this duty to tell me, like what I needed to do with my life, and mainly it was to be cured of my gayness. And I was like, it's not like that. And he like couldn't comprehend when I told him that I wasn't a sinner, and that it wasn't a temptation, and it was, it's just a part of who I am, and I'm finally okay with it. And he just couldn't understand that, and he was just like, there's no way you can be happy with that lifestyle. And I was like, I'm happier than I've ever been, and my anxiety is not what it used to be, and I am not bitter, so angry with the church, and I just felt like I was in a really good place. And he was like, there's no way that you're happy or that you're satisfied, and those people, meaning gay people, are miserable because they're not following God's plan, and that they live a perverted lifestyle. Anyways, long story short, at the end, he kind of damned me to hell and said, you think I'm judging you, but I want you to know that I'm not judging you. Only God can judge you, and may He have mercy on your soul. And I just didn't even know how to respond to that. And so I was kind of shocked, but also it was strangely empowering, because for the first time ever in my lifetime, I was actually able to verbally disagree with him and say that, you know, that's not how it is. Also, he mentioned that he had his suspicions the last year and a half or 2 years, because whenever I would date women, I always found defects in them. And then he said, you know, you always found these defects in these wonderful girls that you dated, but I never would have thought that you were the defect. And that just killed me. And I was just so stunned and shocked that I didn't really know how to respond. And so I just told him, you know, he told me that he loved me, but, and I believe him, and I think he felt like he was doing his duty to me as his child, but it was just really hard because he couldn't comprehend anything I was trying to say. At one point I had to start like talking over him because he wouldn't let me say anything. And so after that conversation, I was so stunned. I didn't really know like what to think about what had just happened. And I'm a pretty emotional person, but like I didn't even cry about it. I don't know, I just was kind of like this like weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I was kind of relieved that even though he was so disapproving and pretty terrible about things, he now knows, and so it was really, really great. But afterwards, almost immediately after I got off the phone with him, something clicked in my head, and I realized, now I get it. Now I understand why gay youth are committing suicide and why they are so miserable and depressed. Because I came out to my parents when I was 30, and I have a career, I have wonderful friends, I have family members that do support me. And so not that like everyone should wait that long, but for me, that's what worked out best for me, and it didn't ruin my life. Like my father's response didn't ruin things. But I can't imagine like hearing those words from my father's mouth as a child or as a teenager. And I just kind of think that it's just so saddening to think about these kids whose parents say those kinds of things to them. So it really just broke my heart just thinking about gay youth. And so that's kind of like why I wanted to really come and talk about it, because I wanted, you know, I hope gay youth see this documentary and, you know, see that adults, like gay adults, you know, kind of move forward and go on. And not that it's easy, but, you know, you can handle things the best way you know how to. Yeah, my sister, I came out to her. She was the first family member I came out to, and it was because she felt like I didn't accept her, because she's the only one in the family really that's like pretty outspoken, conservative. And so she was kind of making these allegations that I didn't respect her, that I thought she was dumb. And I was like, not at all, not at all. If anything, I'm just worried that if you really knew me, you wouldn't accept me and you'd reject me. And she said, David, you're my brother and I love you, and no matter what you said or what you did with your life, like that wouldn't change things. I love you. And she was like, even if you said you were gay, I would still love you. And I said, okay, I'm gay. And it was just terrible. She said, I think, so she told me she loved me, and then the next day she called me, and I think it kind of things, she had thought about things, and she talked to her husband, and how he said that, you know, like, well, we have to love David, but we have to let him know that like we can't support that. And so I kind of felt like she felt like this need to tell me, like, you know, just so you know, it's that really terrible saying that I think many members of the church say is, you know, like hate the sin, love the sinner, or something like that. And so she felt like she had to tell me that she disapproved of the lifestyle of being gay. And so when I told her, so she was saying some pretty terrible things, and she kind of went really back to basics, talking about Adam and Eve, and how woman was created for man, and then just two men together or two women together just doesn't make sense. And so it got to the point where I was just getting very aggravated because she was just being pretty terrible about things. And so she was saying, you know, like, well, you know, like, what do you want me to, like, I can't tell my kids about you, like, you know, like we've been telling them since they were kids that that's incorrect, that that's wrong, that that's a sin. And so, like, I don't know what to do now. Like, what am I going to tell my children about you? And I was like, well, tell them, that I'm their uncle and that I love them and that, that doesn't change things. And then, so then I asked her, well, what would you do if I ever came to your home with someone I was with, And she said, she was like, well, would you want a drug addict coming to your home with your children? I don't think so. And I was like, I just had it, and I just started yelling at her, like, I'm not a drug addict. Like, that's not fair. That's not a fair comparison. And drug addiction is like completely different. I work with drug addicts, and it's a disease, and I don't really consider being gay a disease. I think for me specifically, being gay is what comes naturally to me. I held out for a long time. I went on a mission. I went to BYU with the idea that I could do like the LDS thing. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have children. I wanted to marry in the temple. And then it took me many, 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 many years to come to terms with the fact that I am gay. And so, if anything, I just think being gay is normal, and it's not. There's nothing wrong with being gay, especially, It was really interesting talking to my mom about it, because I was telling her, like, you've been attracted to men your whole life, but imagine, someone telling you like, okay, you have to be with women, and you have to love them, and you have to marry them, and that's what's normal. It's not normal to go against with how you feel, and so I think for me, being gay is normal.